Hey, what's up, everybody? Here are the two things that you need to know about this week. First of all, we're starting to learn about some potential problems in what's called the private credit market. Now, let me explain this briefly. After the 2008 2009 Great Recession, banking came under great scrutiny because of the way that they did mortgage loans. If you know anything about this time period, banks started lending to anybody and everybody in order to buy a house. And many people bought 2 and 3 houses they couldn't afford. And that led to a huge financial crisis. So the government started to significantly regulate the banking system. And it became very hard for a lot of banks to make traditional loans, not your average home loans, but let's say somebody wanted to create a business loan, or let's say somebody is building a hotel or building a shopping mall, and they go to a traditional bank or have in the past, and they go and they get a loan for that hotel or that shopping mall. Well, after 08 and 09, it became very difficult for a lot of these loans to happen. And like a great capitalist society, an entrepreneur came up with an idea of saying, well, why don't I raise a bunch of money from institutions or other businesses, and I will step in and I will make loans to these businesses that need them. And thus began what's called the private credit market, credit as in borrowing. And that has been one of the fastest growing industries over the last couple of years. Because again, a lot of banks have trouble making those loans due to the regulations. Now, here's what's interesting. We've learned that a couple of banks, smaller banks, not your big JP Morgan or Bank of America, but some smaller banks, had actually taken money from their bank and then put it into some sort of investment vehicle to actually make these private credit loans. So even though the bank wasn't doing this, they were investing in a vehicle that could do this. Now, that was perfectly fine as long as those loans continued to pay off. But recently, a couple of those loans that were made to those businesses went bad. Those businesses defaulted and those loans went bad, which ultimately meant that that investment vehicle was on the hook and the bank was on the hook. And so now there becomes a question. How many other banks are investing like this? How much money is in this private credit space? Now, it's very early in this discussion, and maybe nothing transpires from this, but it's interesting to see how this is starting to impact some of the financial stocks out there in the market. Nothing regarding JP Morgan, nothing regarding the big banks like Bank of America, but some of the smaller banks are certainly being impacted by this. And again, if this continues to be a thing, we'll follow it and we'll bring it to your attention. Number two, over the last 24 hours, Donald Trump has basically said that we're backing away from any talks or negotiations with Russia. And in fact, we're going to put significant sanctions on oil. Anyone who buys oil from Russia or any other parts of the world where oil comes from Russia, it's one of their biggest exports. This has created a huge boost in oil, the price of oil, to the tune of around 5%. Why does that matter? Well, we own ConocoPhillips in our portfolio, and that's something to be aware of. And it's very interesting to see how this will play out. Now, you are aware that oil's up 5%. Sometime this weekend, those gas prices are going to go up, and you're going to look around and go, darn it, why is gas going up again? Well, now you know. The only other thing I want to bring to your attention, it's not really that important for us to know, but it is something regarding our portfolio, and that is Tesla had earnings. And what's interesting about Tesla's earnings is they actually missed their earnings or their profit guidance, or sorry, what their expectations were. Their revenue or their sales were quite high, but a lot of people believe that's because they brought forward, they did a tremendous amount of sales before the EV tax credit expired at the end of September. Originally, the stock traded down on this news, but all day long, as I'm cutting this on Thursday, the stock has been bought up, and now it's up 1%. That's really interesting because when a stock has relatively bad or not great news, but still trades higher, that's pretty bullish. So we'll have to see what happens with this stock, but today's price action in Tesla bodes very well for the company going forward. So we'll keep an eye on that. Those are the things you need to know this week. Make it a great one.